Okay, guys, I don't want to waste too much time. We've got a very special guest on the line who I'll introduce shortly, but we do have some milestones, a couple of announcements. We've got some umpires doing their first men's Division 1 game this week. So Nathan D'Souza, Hamish Franklin, and Jake Smith on the boundary, and Fabian Baldwin in the goal. So well done to all of those umpires. A couple of field umpires doing milestone games this week. Jacob Danchenko doing his 100th, young fella to done well to reach that level so quickly. And a big 700 to Mark Goods, who doesn't like fuss being made of him, but 700 is a pretty impressive milestone. So well done, Mark. Enjoy the day. We do have umpires appreciation round this week. So it's community umpiring week in the AFL, and we always combine that with our umpires appreciation round. So as those of you that have been umpiring for a few years will know, there's a handshake gesture before each game where both sides line up and shake the umpire's hands and the opposition's hands. I'll put the attachment in the email so to remind you how that all works, but just make sure that happens for every game. So A, B, and C grade men's, A grade, B grade women's, any game that you umpire with Adelaide Footy League this weekend, that needs to occur. And also part of the umpires appreciation round, the community umpiring week, we're really lucky to have some AFL umpires coming to training this Wednesday night. It's usually our biggest training for the year, so I'd like to see another big number there this year. We've got Curtis DeBoy, field umpire, Matt Konecka again on the boundary coming along, and Brody Kenny Bell in the goal. So we've got each discipline represented, which is awesome. The Umpire Association is going to provide a free barbecue for everyone afterwards, and of course they provide drinks at reasonable prices too. So as I said, it's our biggest attendant training for the year usually, and I don't expect that to be any different this year. So look forward to a big training this Wednesday night. All right, without any further ado, some of you who may not know how big a guest we've got on today, I'm going to, well, simply say that not only is he in the Australian Hall of Fame, and only a handful of umpires are in the Australian Hall of Fame, he's also received the Order of Australia Medal for his services to umpiring, which sort of indicates how significant a role he's played in the game. He is one of the biggest names in umpiring in the history of the game. And I was fortunate enough to get to know him about 20 years ago and touched base with him and reached out, and he was happy to spend some time. So we've got Ryan Sawyers on the line. Ryan, if you can just unmute yourself. I did mute everyone before, so if you could press that unmute button, we would love to hear from you. And
is that better?
Yeah, that's it. Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Very good.
High tech.
Well,
thanks for those kind words, Colin.
There's a few more kind words I've got to come, because I've got a list of achievements you've had, but I didn't want to take up all the time talking about it. We'll ask you questions along the way, but first of all, whereabouts are you at the moment? Tell us.
I've just arrived in Noosa to see our granddaughters. We're up here for 2 months. Takes about 3 days to drive up, and we're here for 2 months. So I miss a portion of the footy season back home, but I'll trade that for 24 degrees today, a lot of sunshine, and a lot of pleasure with my grandkids.
Oh, very good. Well, as you may have picked up on the Crows, man, we talked about that just before, and they're heading up to Queensland this week, so you could go along and catch some footy at the Gabba if that's something you want to do. But
I think I might have a rest. Noosa Tigers are just down the road where my son played, but no, look, I'm still doing a little bit with the local footy league. I still watch a game for them and give a bit of feedback. So I'm still got my finger in the pie at the moment.
Excellent. Well, let's take it back to where it all started. Well, your AFL career, because I did the old Google and looked up Wikipedia and got some facts and figures. So your first VFL game was in 1977, and you had a career that lasted to 1997. Umpired 410 games, which was a record at that time. Must have been an amazing experience to umpire for so long, and obviously umpires some massive games, and footy at that time was as huge as it is now.
Yes, it's certainly. You look back, 97's a long time ago now, and but you always remember your first game, and it was at Moorabbin, it was between St Kilda and South Melbourne at that stage, not the Sydney Swans, and resulted in a draw. So my first ever game in AFL footy was a draw, and I had to wait until 1993, the draw of the Anzac Day, or 95, I should say, the draw of the Anzac Day to have my second draw in AFL. So it was a long time between drawing games. But certainly, I look back and I was very fortunate. And, I heard someone's acknowledge, 700 games. That's a lot of games, a lot of commitment, a lot of training. But I always had the philosophy, if I'm going to do it, I'll do it to the best of my ability. And well, that's the message I try to give to all of the umpires along the way I deal with. So 20 years, a long time, but 700 games, that's a phenomenal amount of games.
Well, you saw Barry Lewis on the line before. He's done over 2,000. So yeah, we've got some
2,000.
incredible milestones in our group. So in those games, 35 finals, 4 grand finals. And 1982 is your first VFL grand final between Carlton and Richmond. What were your memories of that day?
Well, obviously, there's many memories. It was a very tough, hard game. There was a bit of argy-bargy, you'd say a few spot fires, I think is the best way to put it. Jimmy Jess sort of had a bit of biffo, I guess, Bruce Stool. It was a tough, hard game, and always remember, looking over your shoulder, things were happening, and I guess I was taught very early, if you've got nothing, you've got to control a game of football, and certainly that was what we were doing, and I remember halfway through the third quarter, this almighty roar went up, and I thought to myself, oh, God help me, who's got deck behind the play? We had a streaker, and probably she's very well remembered from over in Adelaide, from the Crazy Horse, I believe, and some place you've never been, Colin, I'm sure. But certainly that changed the dynamics of the game, and it was a different game after that. A few players, I remember Peter Bazzusto, I hope there's being put off his game, still talking about it in the last quarter. So, that's memorable. Then, it was a tough, hard game, and Carlton got across the line. And then the next one, 84, Essendon Hawthorn. It was a tough, tight game. It was, a day where you could just sense Essendon coming home with a wet sail, and got up in the last quarter, Leon Baker and Timmy Watson cutting loose. So, they were my first 2 grand finals, and quite memorable for different reasons. One was a slashing game in the end, and the other one we had the streaker. But it was your first grand final, and that probably makes it most memorable.
So Helen D'Amico, she is well known. How close were you to her when she ran on?
I think Glenn James got her phone number, but I missed out. So, look, it was a distraction for the players. So, we're there, as umpires to do a job, and it was a distraction. It was a distraction to the players. Once she was off the ground, you had to settle down and get there and play footy again. It was the most important game of the year, is any grand final. Doesn't matter whether it's the under 12s or AFL. The grand final for those 2 teams is the most important. So I think it detracted, and it was probably, reflecting back, disappointing that it occurred, because it was a good, tough, hard game of footy.
So you mentioned before about the keeping control, and obviously footy has changed a lot. These days at AFL level, they have the video reviews, and player behaviour is, totally changed. At our level, we have the red and yellow cards, which help control a game. How did you control a game back then when you didn't really have any of those measures?
That's a really good question, Colin. I guess I had a very simple philosophy throughout my umpiring career, is that a very simple game plan, and I probably went along with it. When I coached umpires, is protect the ball player, especially ahead. pay all warranted free kicks, pay 50 when you have to. And at the end of the day, back then, the last thing we had to do was report a player. And so if you didn't get a response through paying free kicks or 50s, it didn't leave you many other avenues. But certainly, I think at community football, the red card, the yellow card, and when I was at the Essendon District Footy League, we introduced the blue card as well. And the blue card, as it says, is just to cool off and the player for unsportsmanlike behaviour. So I think those mechanisms help umpires today, and certainly the game's different. I don't think it is as how to say, terrible things occurring, behind the play these days. I got a lot of community football, and I think people are out there, and everyone wants to go to work on Monday. I think that's the important thing at community football.
You had some massive characters back in the VFL back then. Um, you could name a number of them, and there are big personalities that would often just get carried away. You see some of the footage these days. How did you manage those types? Or did you how did you?
Um, it's interesting. You had characters from Mark Jackson to Peter Crackers Keenan, and then you had big name players, Cowboy Neil, Carl Dietrich. They were tough, hard players when I first started, and I just took the avenue. I treated them all with respect. Right from day one, I never swore on the footy field. I use that as, if they were swearing at me, I always had the upper hand if I didn't do it back. And certainly there's a lot of fun. The banter between Don Scott and Peter's Cracker Keenan was very good, and you get to enjoy it. And from Michael Tuck to Tony Shaw, there was a lot of players that give you a bit of lip, and you just had to come back with a quick, sharp line back to them, and then move on. And back then, with only one or two, you had to move on. You couldn't stay there like in the 3-umpire and now the 4-umpire. And the game kept moving, and you had to keep moving with it.
Yeah, so I mean, it is legendary what the discussions were between umpires and players back in the 70s and 80s. It was almost like some umpires gave as good as they got, which you just can't do these days, of course. You're saying that you never swore at a player, which probably wasn't the same with all umpires. But
Certainly not.
yeah, but uh, but I would say you're ahead of your time. You were able to hold that respect, perhaps because of the way you conducted yourself. But there was that fun banter that you're able to engage in.
Sorry, what was the last
There was
bit?
that fun banter that you were able to engage in.
Well and truly, there's a lot of, good fun, good exchanges out on the ground. And, I always believe that if you treated players with respect and spoke to them in a good tone, you get it back. Now, some players, it might take a little while. It was probably a little bit different back then. At AFL level now, as everyone knows, they're mic'd up and can hear everything which is being said. But I probably back then took the attitude, well, I want to stay above swearing and yelling and screaming. And I think it worked for me. I think that's what I've always tried to portray as a coach and an umpire, and now mentoring umpires. You can get a good result just by being level-headed and explaining things in a good tone to the players.
Yeah, excellent. And you mentioned your first two grand finals. Your last two were 1987 Carlton and Hawthorn, and 1990 Collingwood and Hawthorn. What were your memories of those games?
Well, 87, very memorable because Michael Tuck wore short sleeves, so it was a very, very hot day, and I was surprised. And it was sort of over early. It was a very hot game. Did it with Ian Robinson, who I did my first game with, so it was good to do a grand final with Ian. But it was a hot day, and Carlton just had the better of Hawthorn all day. Then obviously 1990 Essendon versus Collingwood. Everyone knows who kicked 5 goals. Essendon, just in case you've forgotten. But it was a strange grand final in that The crowd noise wasn't as loud as other grand finals. It was a bit like Collingwood waiting to, the last quarter to be half over before they really, we've got this in the bag. And the fight at quarter time, Neil Danaher and other players got involved. It was just that Collingwood settled a lot quicker and a lot better after the fracas at quarter time, and I think that was the difference in the game.
So you also did 8 State of Origin games.
Yes.
How many of those were South Australia versus Victoria?
That's look, I really wouldn't know, but I did do a couple. I did one with Laurie Argent, I know that. I probably did 2 or 3 over there. But State of Origin was good. I think when I first started doing State of Origin, there was a lot of players out of the Waffle and Sandford, just not AFL at that stage. And by the last couple of interstate games, they were all AFL players, so you knew them all. Whether it was Kernahan, Bradley, Naish, I should say. You knew most of the players, or been away with them, or been on international trips, and so you got to know a fair few of them. But they were sensational games. Interstate games, always tough, hard, fast, and generally early on during the week. Later on they're at night. They were something really memorable.
Yeah. So you mentioned your first game was Moorabbin. Some other venues that you umpired at before, I guess, they've standardised things in recent times. So you would have umpired at Victoria Park plenty of times and some of the other venues?
Yeah, Victoria Park was a different place to go to. Certainly the grounds like Norwood, where the crowd's really close to you. That's a Victoria Park feeling, and that they were good. North Melbourne, I think I had the smallest crowd ever, about 4,000 people. North Melbourne, Fitzroy one day in a rainy day. Essendon, Windy Hill. Obviously Moorabbin. Punt Road I missed out on, and probably
Waverley?
Brunswick too. Obviously Waverley. That was really good. It was only just down the road from me, so I enjoyed going to Waverley.
Nice.
But yeah, they were good times. The bad times, when you say about, if we remember when during the season we'd go out to Waverley in the mud, and an interstate team would come over and play an AFL team, and in the dead of night, and they weren't memorable days out at Waverley when it was cold and wet and sinking the mud up to your ankles. That's for sure.
So you did a few years when the Crows were in the competition and West Coast. So did you, as the AFL started to evolve, did you do much interstate travel?
The first year the Eagles came in, I probably did 7 games over there. Adelaide, I did a number of games. I actually enjoyed the going interstate to do the game, because it was just a different experience, and you got to meet different people and different clubs, and again, it gave you opportunity to mix and probably further broaden your own horizons of what goes on in footy. And so going into state, I enjoyed. Then as coach, going back to watch the Sandford and the Waffle and all that, gave a different perspective on footy and umpiring.
410 games, which is a phenomenal effort, and was a record until Hayden Kennedy came along, and then of course Brett Roseby and Shane McInerney. But those guys have had the 3 and 4 umpire system to help them get to where they got to. How many of your 410 were 2 umpire systems?
Well, the majority, the first 300 were 2 umpires. So I did league seconds with 1 umpire. I did about 8 seconds games, and they were all 1 umpire. And then the year I got into the seniors, that was the first year of 2 umpires. So 77 through to the early 90s were all 2 umpires. So it was tough. We used to run about 18K. They tell us 18 to 20K, and then we'd all get together on the Sunday morning, go and run 10. I look back and say, why did we ever do that? I don't understand. Someone said it was good for you, but no, it was a challenge physically as well as, you know, umpiring the game and obviously bouncing on some of the grounds, which were pretty muddy back in those days.
Yeah. So you move on after your umpiring career is finished to become the AFL head umpires coach, and you did that role from 1998 to 2013. So that's a significant amount of time. Tell us about that role and how much did you enjoy it?
It was a different role, a challenging role. I had can I first say this? I had the best umpires in Australia to work with, and it doesn't matter whether they umpired one game or 400 games or whatever. They were the best, and they were quality people and easy to coach. I probably had the best coaching job going around because everyone on that list just wanted to be the best they possibly could. All I had to do was give them some guidance and some boundaries, and I guess give them honest feedback. And sometimes that wasn't the pleasant part of the job, really. And you know, I think dealing with coaches, yeah, that might be unpleasant at times, but you know, they've got a role to do. But working with the umpires and trying to get the best out of those umpires, but they're all quality people, great people to work with, and I actually really enjoyed that part of it. And that's the part which kept me going to community football after working with the actual umpires. Dealing with coaches, well, that's a different issue. Dealing with different media and different situations, that's a different issue. But quality people all wanted to do well, no different to your umpires, Cole. Everyone who goes out there, I've got a simple philosophy is if you're going to do something, do it the best of your ability. And I say to kids, you know, if you're going to do your homework, do it the best of your ability. Have a crack. And you go to training, do it, train to the best of your ability. Just don't hang around the back of the pack. And you know, if everyone does that, they'll look in the mirror at the end of the day and say, hey, I've given it my best shot. I just wasn't good enough. I've tried my best, you know, and I've achieved A, B, C, D. And everyone's got different levels. And I just want to see umpiring improve, grow at community level, because I really believe after working community level, we need help, we need assistance, we need resources, we need funding. And, you know, so all the umpires you've got, when it's time to give it away, get into some way of observing, coaching, giving a little bit. Doesn't have to be every week. I'm away for 8 weeks, but when I'm in Melbourne, I go and watch my local umpires and try and give a little bit back.
Yeah,
But I
great.
loved it.
Yeah, fantastic. So, in that top job in the AFL, you talked about having to deal with coaches who are highly emotional, and I would imagine administrators and like you said, the media, people just want to have their say, and they get so worked up and emotional. How much did the AFL protect you from all that, or did you go to work on Monday morning dreading what phone calls you were going to get?
When I was in the role, I probably went to work Monday morning, already watched 6 games of footy, knowing what had occurred. And so to do the role properly, I wanted to go well equipped. So, you know, from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if I wasn't the footy, I was watching the football. And yeah, under Adrian Anderson wanted us to be transparent. So we had press conferences, we explained decisions, we supported our umpires to the hilt, you know, on the front foot and saying, hey, we're going to talk about this decision before we actually did it. But it probably doesn't occur that way at the moment. Spokesman from the AFL comes and clarifies things. But, you know, Jeff was a fantastic leader of the umpiring department through that stage. He always was out there answering questions, always supporting the umpires. And I think we went as a pair, Jeff, particularly leading the umpires, we had a good probably 14 seasons at the AFL.
So for those that don't know, Jeff Geesham, former Richmond coach, and yeah, played a big part in the umpiring scene for many years. So it's always intriguing. Someone like Eddie Maguire, like who we all know Eddie gets like goes over the top and ridiculously biased towards Collingwood. Would he ever get in touch, or was it always the football departments?
Oh, look, from time to time, it might be a coach, it might be a media person. Everyone had ideas. I think we met with Eddie Maguire once, and he wanted 8 umpires to be able to award free kicks. And well, we're probably heading that way. We've got 4 now. So, but he wanted the 4 boundaries to be able to award free kicks too. But I don't know whether we could have a consistency as such. But with 4, you should cover all the angles. Colin, you probably still could be running around doing it as well.
I
But
don't have to bounce so much these days. That would have helped me.
yeah, but look, no, you dealt with them again. We could be on the front foot and say to a club, look, we haven't had the best game, or we know this decision's wrong before it even hits thing. And probably some things didn't hit the media because we're on the front foot as such. But that wasn't all the time, because clubs wanted to show their fans and supporters that they were looking after their players, and we understand that. That's part of the role. But I think they get better protection now. But I liked Adrian Anderson's philosophy of, well, let's explain, and the more the fans understand the rules, the better off we all should be. And I think that went pretty well to a point at different times.
Something that caught my eye in the Wikipedia a piece about you was your involvement with the AFL Laws of the Game Committee. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was on the Laws Committee the 14 years I was an umpires coach, so I'd give it an umpire's point of view. When I first joined the Laws Committee, it was probably a group of ex-players, and as time went on, they got a couple of players, and there's discussion about a running umpire and things like that. So I was there trying to give an umpiring perspective, e.g., say let's not bounce around the ground. Well, if we're not going to bounce around the ground, why bounce in the centre? So but try and give an umpire's perspective, hands in the back and things like this. You trying to give the umpire's point of view, and we'd go away and look at all the ifs and buts and try and come up with what's the best law, and then let the Laws Committee take it, to the commission and pass things. So there's football side of it, which I didn't get involved with, rotations and things like that. Other people better qualified than me in those areas.
Yeah. So you've mentioned it a couple of times, but your involvement in community footy. So the Essendon Football League, you spent as umpire manager between 2014 and 2020. Tell us a little bit about that time.
That was probably one of my most enjoyable areas, going back to community football. I started academies in Islamic schools. I've worked with people who were disadvantaged. I had a relationship with the Broadmeadows Court for youth who needed a job. We used umpiring as a job, and a lot of these kids needed assistance, and it was fulfilling. And you run into some of these ex-umpires from the Essendon district, or they're still umpiring, and you had some good times with them, and to see kids grow and develop. As Harry Birch, who's on the AFL panel now, he's a 13-year-old when I first went to Essendon, and someone like Nathan Toner, who was a 17-year-old when I went to Essendon. So I've seen a number go through the system to go to the elite, but I saw our numbers grow, say, from 300 umpires to over 600 umpires, and that gave me a lot of satisfaction. And there's a lot of people who went to training, had good fun. It was a fun place to go, and we did everything we possibly could to protect them, to make it a great environment to come to. And community football gave me a lot of satisfaction.
And we did have a chat earlier on this year about some retention and recruitment ideas, and we have taken on board some of that stuff. So yeah, your knowledge is amazing, and it certainly has an impact. So look, I've hogged this interview big time. I could keep going, but I know there's probably some on the line that would perhaps like to ask a question or two. So I'll give them the chance. We've only got about 7 or 8 minutes left. Is there anyone there that would like to ask a question or Ryan?
Cole, Brendan.
Go for it, mate.
Rowan, I was at that game with Fitzroy and North Melbourne at Princes Park. Very wet man, caught a train home, stood under the shower until the hot water ran out. And I thought I saw a Brownlow medalist that day and a young Wayne Carey. Didn't quite get there, but he was the only guy that could mark the football.
Yeah, there's some days you go, wow, there's great players. And, Princes Park, there's another community ground which gave, probably paid one of my worst decisions at Princes Park. Bruce Dool pushed his player in the back. I blew the whistle and thought, that's a good free kick. Guy got out covered in mud. It was a Carlton player. So, that was one I'd like to have taken back.
But that wasn't my question. My question was, in your role at the AFL, were you ever involved with providing feedback on the rules to the commentators? Because today, with every game being on TV, they seem to lack a genuine understanding of the rules.
Yes, we're back, and Colin, remember, we made a DVD. So with that DVD on the rules and interpretations, we'd go to every AFL club and we'd go to every media outlet and go through it. I really am a great believer that the DVD, old hat now, you can do it with technology so much quicker with computers, just gave a fallback stance on this is what holding the ball is, this is what a push in the back is. And we went to 7, we went to 9, even though they didn't commentate it, we went to all the outlets, the papers, and Fox Footy, and I think it was quite successful and giving some education. Now, whether they took it on board or not, but you'd often hear them refer, well, that's not what's on the DVD. So I think some people did use it as a fallback.
We've got a few lining up to speak to you.
Yeah,
Mike Raymond, keep it brief, mate.
Yeah, I will. Rowan, thank you very much. Probably the perfect person to be talking in Umpire Appreciation Week because your passion for umpiring shows. Mate, I know you know a lot of people, but my very first footy coach in 1993 was a beautiful man called Vas Vasiliou, and he umpired 26 VFL games. And he taught me 3 things that I still remember today. And one of them is Colin's main thing is take no shit. He told us to have fun and enjoy it. And the third one, and I always remember this one, is blow that whistle so hard that people know you're in control of that match. So I'm sure you remember him, mate. He was a lovely man, and he was the reason I'm in umpiring today.
Vass was a Frankston boy. I used to share a car. He used to drive up. He'd probably smoke a pack of cigarettes from Frankston to the training. He was the most different AFL umpire going around. And for those who didn't know him, his name was Vas Vasiliou. We used to call him Billy Williams. He's a gentle guy, and unfortunately had an aneurysm, and it was sad, but it just shows you if you work hard, doesn't matter, you work your guts out, which he did to get there. It's an amazing story. So if you've met him, you've met a great man.
Yeah, mate. It's he's someone in my life I'll never forget, and an influence that I'll always appreciate. So thank you, Ron.
No worries.
Barry Lewis.
Yeah. Have I unmuted?
Yes, you have, mate. Far away.
Oh, right.
Yeah, 3 minutes left.
Yeah, Rowan, first thing, you were the best umpire I've ever seen in the AFL. I used to admire watching you umpire and used to sort of smile to myself when I saw you umpire in a game, thought, this is a good umpire. The question I've got for you, you reckon we ought to throw the bounce out?
Look, I'm a great believer that if you're only bouncing the centre for 3 or 4 bounces each, why have it? There's a lot of skill, a lot of effort goes into it. I was a great believer once it went around the ground, it should have gone in the middle, because once you throw it up once or twice at the AFL, no one would even remember that it's there. So yeah, I think it's probably time for it to go.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Barry. We've got a couple of questions here from Alison at Meek, and she doesn't have a mic. She wants to know whether you think the game's over umpired now, and also what would you think about the idea of using red cards in the AFL?
I think the safest place to play footy these days is the AFL. I don't think they need card system. I think community football does, and levels underneath. What was the other question?
Do you think the game's over umpired?
No, you only have to pay what you see, and I'll back umpires all the way through. If they think it's a free kick, let's go with it. I think let's throw good stuff. Well, let's talk about the good stuff of umpiring. I get bogged down when people, oh, what about this? What about that? No, we do a lot of things really well, at all levels in umpiring. And I just think, let's hang our hat on the good stuff. It doesn't matter, AFL, VFL, Sandful, Waffle, community football. Let's just look at the positives.
Beautiful. That is a great way to finish. Bo Gurnham's asked me to ask about me, but I'm not going to ask you about that. We're going to move on and say thank you very much. It's been amazing to have a chat with you. We could talk all night, but this is about to cut out. Thank you so much for spending the time with us this evening.
No worries at all, and good luck for the rest of the season, everyone. All the best.
Thanks, guys, and look forward to seeing you this Wednesday night for a big training session.